And this is working, I expect. Cool. Anyway, so looking at two things. So the IK-FK switch for the arms, and then also the constraining of the hands to an object in this case. Okay, so I think in most cases for this project, it'll be constraining both hands to one object. Since it's a heavy object, you'll tend to use both hands. If it was only one object, we'd probably constrain that object to the hand. But since both hands need to be in contact with it and move, it's easiest then to constrain both hands to the heavy object and then animate the heavy object. Okay. So remember that as soon as our hands come into contact with an object, we want to switch over to IK so that our hands can stop moving and be controlled by the thing. So to get there, it needs to be an FK first and then switch over to IK. Okay. And also what we need to do is we need to make sure that all of our characters' controls are in constant interpolation in terms of the keys and stuff. Okay, we'll get there now. So let's just quickly do basic pose. Also, when you guys are busy with this, try not to just, you know, when you pose your characters, you should pose like most of the character. Don't just fold the arms down and say, okay, done, you know. Give them a nice cool stance. So, and this is all stuff that you should be able to detect from your reference, okay, so that you can easily know exactly what it is that you're doing and not make it up. Okay, so look at your reference, see what's happening in the reference. Rotate particularly your hips and your shoulders on every pose that you set. Okay. So let's do that, rotate the shoulders slightly differently. The head can do something else, whatever. Okay. And then also the hands, like even if it's just posed on the first frame and not again, where the hands aren't touching something, just try and give them some form of shape. I know the other hands, weight painting's a bit broken, so don't worry too much about that. But at least to just give it some slightly more relaxed kind of pose. There's all these controls for you guys to use, so use them. Okay, so for instance, let's say that that is our relaxed hand pose, and we can just use this for our blocking and just copy and paste it onto the other hand. So to say that, copy, if your copy attributes add-on is enabled, you can just say copy pose, and then Control Shift V, I think, will paste it to the other side. Even if the weights are broken, I mean, it's basically that, which I'll fix and give you guys an updated rig sometime before the end of the module, and then you can just swap the rig out. Okay. Then pose this arm a little bit. Rotate that back, just so that there's something more happening in these poses. Okay, so that should be a little bit more interesting than just the default pose. Agreed? I think so. Make sure that you're keying on whole character. Okay, and as soon as you set your first keyframe, select all your controls, select all your poses, or all your keys, if you only have one pose, and say constant. Okay, just so that we know we're not setting, we're not animating on base 0 just yet. Okay, so from there, that's my first pose. Then my second pose, for keeping this brief, will be where his hands are making contact with the box. And for that pose, I want his hands to be in IK. Okay, so first of all, go down to your rig layers and turn on your IK hand controls, okay, which will show them, okay, and we'll do the whole snapping IK to FK thing just now. So let's just pose them. We know over here we want them to be IK as they're touching the box. So slide it over to IK, and then what I do is I select the hand control and shift right click or place your 3D cursor on where you want your control to go, and then shift S to get your selection to cursor, which will move your hand to where the box is. Okay, which is a nice, quick and easy way. So that way we can then go and rotate our control, and probably it should be at 90-degree angles, I'm guessing. So if we go 90-ish and 90-ish, or however we want that hand to be posed. Okay, Then there we can go and reset all the rotations on the fingers to get that hand flat. There as well. Okay, there we want it to be flat. And rotate that back. Okay, so that hand is making contact. That should be fine. Okay. So immediately, I'm going to just key that pose because I don't want to lose any of it. Okay, even though it's just the hand that's being posed now. So that's there. I am then also going to go and select just the pose of the fingers and the rest of the hand. And say copy, and then Control-Shift-V to get the other hand in the same place symmetrically. Okay, which we may not want it to be entirely symmetrical, so let's just go and move it around. To change from local to global gizmos, you can either change it over there, or you can press the comma or the less than button on your keyboard, which helps to move things along a global axis if it's necessary. Okay, for instance, in that case, so we don't have exactly the same hand pose. Okay, then we go back over here to our rig. I think it's in Tool, Item, Properties. Where's our rig stuff? View. There we go. Okay, so now we know that both hands are IK. I'm going to key it again so that I don't lose any of that. So from there to there. And then we need to go and adjust the rest of our pose. So let's go and make sure that that happens. We can adjust the elbows to be in a nicer place. Okay, remember this is still just blocking, so we can go and lock in our contact poses of our feet. So if we move 1 foot, we just need to make sure we move 1 foot at a time. Okay, don't go and move all your both feet on both frames because then you're animating them to slide. Okay, we can probably also, to make it a little bit more interesting, this is all stuff that you should be able to tell from your reference. So we can lift that foot up a little bit as well. Okay, so let's say that there's our pose, so we're going from there to there. Okay, so the reason why that's still tweening or splining in between is because my IK controls weren't visible when I set everything onto constant. So if I select those, or everything now, go back to here, select all the keys, press T, say constant, and then that shouldn't happen anymore. So go bank. Okay, and then from there, once it's on there, we want to constrain it to the box so that on the next pose we can, for instance, move the box if we wanted to, and the hands would move with. Okay, so from the contact point, we want to constrain it onto the box. Okay, so let's set that up. Okay, so if we want the hand to move with the box, which we do, and as we said, for these exercises, or for this exercise and everything, chances are you do want to constrain your hand to the object and not the other way around. So in that case, the hand to the box, the control, the IK control itself needs to have the constraint on, which is then constraining it to the box. Okay, so it's not the other way around. So we select the hand control, go into Bone Constraints tab, and add a child of Bone Constraint. If we here select the cube, which should be right over there, it's going to break, and from that point we click Set Inverse. Okay, so that jumps back to where it was. Okay, so it takes into consideration the transforms of that control and works it into the constraint. Okay, from there, on this frame we know this is where we want it to be constrained from, so I'm going to set a keyframe on my influence slider, okay, so that it starts here, and on the very previous frame I'm going to turn that off. Okay, so I don't want it to be constrained there. Okay, so only from this point on. Okay, same for the other hand, so I'm going to select that IK control, add a child of constraint under the Bone Constraint tab, select the box as my target object. If that doesn't work, then just select it there manually, and say Set Inverse. Okay, again, on the frame where I want it to start moving, I'm going to set a key on the influence slider, and the previous frame I'm going to turn that off. Okay, so that means on this frame where it's off, if I move my box nothing's going to happen to the hand controls. So even though they are up there, we can see they're not moving. And on the very next frame, if we do the same thing, the hands are going to move with. Okay, which is exactly what you want. Okay, so now we should also probably, from this pose, set a keyframe on the box. Okay, now we can't just press I because it's going to say no suitable context info for active keying set, and that's because the active keying set is still a whole character, and this isn't an armature or a character. So the easiest way to set a key on this without going and changing the keying set each time you want to change or key the character and the box, just go into the item tab over there and set a keyframe on its location. Okay, if you do that, then it's going to work. Okay, so from there, we have that working. Then on my next pose, okay, we want the box, whatever. So it's a box to have moved a little bit. So he's pushing. Okay, so also don't remember to be in pose mode, which I wasn't. Okay, maybe there. Maybe his feet are sliding back a little bit, who knows. Here, I always say sliding feet are bad unless you intend for them to slide, obviously, in which case it's not the end of the world. Okay, okay, so there you see, even though I'm pulling it back on that graph, it's moving on the local axes, which I don't want. I want them to slide back straight. So in that case, either you can set the gizmos back to global, or if you use the keyboard shortcuts, you can press G, Y, Y, and you'll see then you're switching from local to global, Y. Okay. Okay, so whatever our next pose is. Also, these relationship lines really annoy me. So in that viewport overlays tab button drop down, you can turn them off. Okay. So let's just get our next pose. Where I want this to be more like that, and this you would pick up from your reference. I want those arms to be straight pretty much to give me a sense of pushing. Okay, so somewhat like without the arms stretching. Okay, so like that perhaps. Okay, that leg's going to bend a little bit, so let's rotate the hips to prevent that from bending too much. And then we'll rotate the shoulders as well. Rotate the shoulders forward a little bit. There we go. Okay, so you can see that line of action there is really trying to emphasize the fact that that object is heavy. Okay, set a keyframe. Okay, and that should ideally set a frame on our entire character. Let's go to our dope sheet and make sure before we move the time slider. So if you expand or just click that button off, then you can see it set frames on your whole character. Okay, so there, pushes, okay, box isn't doing anything, and then maybe the box can start sliding a little bit. So if you set another frame over there, item, transform, from there, maybe from there it starts sliding forwards just a bit. And then this dude is pretty much falling, or whatever. Okay, so then go back there, get our next pose in. Okay, if these feet are sliding, then we can pull that back a little bit more, rotate the foot roll up.
What?
And then over there on my next pose I want him to fall or whatever, but his hands must then detach themselves from the box. Okay. That foot very much slidden. Okay, so over there we can then go and pose and then falls, so maybe falls down. The box can move a little bit forward again. The blamp. Let's reset that. For now, that leg's broken. Okay, however he's actually fallen, we'd have to figure out or get from our reference. Let's reset that and rotate that one some more. Okay, knee's broken, so let's just use that control to move the knee out. Maybe we can just pose that foot a little bit nicer, so maybe it's lying on its side rather. That's a bit better. So let's do the same thing with the other foot actually. And then put this back down on the ground, and then just rotate this so they're not symmetrical. Okay, and over here, I want the arms to also be back in FK. So let's key that so long. Select the hand controls. We'll do the unparenting of it now, but let's also put it back into FK. So we go, we say slide it back into FK, which is all the way over there. Okay, so before we do, no, let's do it properly. Okay, do that, and then also we can, sometimes it's really good just to reset the rotations on objects before you're posing them, particularly if it's in like an awkward pose. It's a little bit easier then just to pose it again from there. So let's rotate that, put that down on the ground, flatten his face. Kaboom. Okay, and as a base, I'm going to just select this arm and copy the pose to the other side. And also then slide that back onto FK and then pose that further from there. Kablam. Okay, so on that frame then, obviously I don't want that to be constrained to the box anymore. Again, for the reason that if we left it constrained and this ever had any motion on it again, it would affect our hands. So we do need to unconstrain them as well. Okay, so from there, pushes the box, and then just from there, you know, to make it a little bit more purposeful, we can maybe just pull the box a little bit more. Okay. So that means on that frame is the last time we want those hands to be constrained, and then from there he needs to fall. Right. So again, we go into our hands that are currently constrained. Okay, and now we need to animate this off. And this is pretty much, I don't want to say a trial and error thing, but you need to observe what it is that you're doing and adjust what you're doing to make it work. Okay, so chances are that we're not always going to remember an exact set of steps or processes to make this work. So in that case, we do need to go and see what's happening and see how do we adjust what it is that we're doing to make what it is that we're doing work. Okay, so as I was saying, on the last frame, we over there, that's the last time we want it to be keyed, so I'm going to key it on there, and the very next frame, I'm going to key it off. Okay, and that will then reposition our hand, so it won't stay in that place, and that's what we need to go and fix. Okay, same thing with this one, and on this frame, I want it on there, I want it off. Okay, and I'm purposefully moving the box away so that we can see that it's off, even though it doesn't make sense for our animation itself. But I want the hands to stay in this position. Okay, I don't want that to happen over there. Okay, and the reason why that's happening is on this frame, they are being constrained, and the constraint is leaving it there, even though its position, if I slide this off, is back there. So that means on this next frame, where it jumps back, I need to rekey those hands so that they're there, or even better, on this actual frame, I need to key it so that they're in that position. Okay, so remember how we did that. And there's two things that are going to happen now. So ideally, we don't want to have our hands keyed 2 frames after a row, or in a row. So we want this frame where they are keyed for them to be physically keyed in that position. But remember, if we now go and update the position of the hand over here, the constraint is still active on this frame as well. So if we update it and we put the constraint, or leave the constraint on, it's going to basically move the hand twice. Okay, so that means what we're going to do is we're going to update this pose and then adjust the keys that we've made on the actual Child of Constraint to turn off a frame earlier. Okay, so let's see what's going to happen. Okay, so if I select the hand, okay, remember the button that we want is in here, and it's under Apply, and there's Apply Visual Transform to Pose. So it's going to look at the visual transformation of this object, which isn't the actual transformation. Remember, the constraint is only moving the display of that object. Okay, so if we click that button, okay, it's going to move it away, and that's what I was saying. It's now doubled the motion because the Child of Constraint is also moving it. Okay, however, we want to key it here, so I'm going to set my keyframe again. Okay, key there. I'm going to do the same thing for this hand. And again, it's going to push it away. So it's going to apply the transform and the constraint. And now all that we need to do is the frames of the actual influence, we want to have that be, instead of turning off on the next frame, we want it to turn off on this frame. Okay. So let's move that so long. Okay, so on each control, now we want on the previous frame, we want it to be on. Okay. So just hovering over it, pressing I, and on this frame we want it to be off. Okay, so let's see what that's doing. Okay, and there, that's correct. So it's stopping there. This hand, we need to do the same thing. So again, instead of the next frame we want it to turn off, we want it to turn off from this frame. And that means the previous frame we want it to be on, and then we turn it off over there, which will bring it back over there. Okay. So he's going to push, 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 push. Box is going to slide away, and his hands are going to stay there until he falls. Okay. Everyone, you guys follow that? More or less. Okay. So it's really just being careful of the constraint and the visual transform, which doubles your transforms, in which case we need to apply the transform and remove the constraint just a bit earlier. Okay. Anyway, so that would then do what we wanted to do. Then switching back to the IK and the FK, what we just need to remember to do there is to have the IK controls and the FK controls in the same place on both frames that we are switching. So for instance, on this first frame, so we're going from here in frame 1, where we have FK arms, and frame 9, where we have IK arms, we want on both 1 and 9 that both IK and FK are in the same positions. So on the first frame, all that we need to do is select the hands, go down to our rig main properties section, and say IK, we want this control to follow the FK control. So we say snap the IK control to the FK control. We do the same for that one. And then we just rekey our whole rig. Then on the next pose over there, we want the same, we want the FK to be where the IK is. So we here say FK to IK, FK to IK. Okay, so luckily those are easy switches. Okay, so that means that when we put this in spline, that hand is going to go directly there. And then from here, where we have our last IK frame, we want our FK arms to be where the IK arms are. And on that one, we want the IK arms to be where the FK arms are. Okay, so again, we do the exact same thing. So on this frame, we select one of the hand controls. We can select either the IK or the FK, it doesn't matter. Okay, they'll both show you that button. So we want the IK to go where the FK is. Sorry, other around with the FK to go where the IK is on this frame. Okay, same for this one. Select that one, FK to IK, keep the whole rig, and on this one, where's FK again, we want the IK to be where that one is. So there we say snap IK to FK, there we say snap IK to FK. Here again. Okay, and that, if we go and put this into spline, which we will get, let's just put a quick in-between in over there just to pick that foot up so that that foot doesn't slide forwards. So remember, the easy way to do an in-between is if we go and select all our keys, quickly put it into linear, key it over there, and then put everything back into constant so that we're only looking at that. Then we know what a lot of you guys aren't doing yet in this exercise is you're completely forgetting about the weight shifts that we learned about in the walk cycle, right? So over here, remember, this is now the in-between. Okay, so let's actually just color it in, call it in-between, breakdown. So over there, I want this foot actually to be up in the air. So let's lift it up. Remember, if it's in the air, we don't use that control. We only rotate the ankle control itself. Okay, so just that. Okay, maybe that's a bit high, perhaps. So let's just pull it down and rotate it a little bit less. Okay, remember when you pick your foot up, your toe tends to drop a little bit. Okay, so remember about that as well. Okay, so there is my in-between over there. And if I pick this foot up, my weight shifts onto the leg that I'm still standing on. Okay, there, that would still be on the ground. And our hips rotate to help us lift that leg up, and our shoulders would then do the opposite. Okay, so from there, he's going up there. Okay, so that could actually be a pretty much, that foot can be in the air a little already. So that would basically be a, wait, would it be in the air? Let's rotate that down again. Okay, we need more poses, but anyway. Just so that he doesn't lean so far forward on that one. So maybe we could pull this back a little bit still. Okay, so that's a bit better, and then collapses. Okay, so now if we were to put this into spline or Bezier, select all my keys and put it into Bezier, there shouldn't be any. Bang. Okay, so that all works. Okay, so there's something weird's happening. And why is that happening? Because there technically my hand should still be constrained. So let's see what's happening over there. And I can tell you now what it is, and it's that those controls. Let's see. Okay, so there we now have motion from there, where it's touching the box, to, let me just do this in the graph editor. Okay, so let's just look at the hand itself and the locations. Okay, so what's happening between there, why that's moving while it's still constrained. Remember, a constraint doesn't limit the movement. Okay, it only moves it with something else as well. So it's going to move with the box, but we can still animate on top of that. Okay, and the reason why that's going through the box now is on that key where our constraints are off, it's still touching. Okay, but now we have actual movement from there to there. So on this previous frame where the constraint is on, we've moved the hand. So that means there's another thing that we need to make this constraint work. Okay, and the last frame where it is actually constrained, okay, that hand still needs to be in the position where the constraint was put on. So we can pretty much make it a rule that if your hand, the constraint is on, there shouldn't be any change in the animation until you turn it off again. Okay, so, and currently there is. So to fix that, all that we need to do is copy one keyframe. Okay, so if we select that hand, okay, we can see this middle line over there is the animation on the hand, and it is from there where it's constrained. Okay, that key and that key, those are the same because there's a line in between it. But from there to there, we've actually moved it because we've slid the constraint off and put the hand back to where it should have been over there. Okay, so to fix that, we need to duplicate that key as well, and then it should fix it. Okay, practice makes perfect. So again, it's the situation of looking at what it is that you're doing, seeing why is it not working, and then updating it accordingly. Okay, so again, also with this hand, the constraint is on there, but it's almost already in the position where it's touching the box with the constraint off, so we need to duplicate that to put it back there. Does that make sense? I fear it doesn't. Anyway, it's luckily very easy to fix. Okay, everyone happy with that? As an exercise. Cool. Okay, so remember that your constraint goes on your IK hand controls itself. Okay, the IK FK switching isn't, I think that's pretty much the easiest part of this. The difficult part is just turning the constraint off. Okay, so remember on the constraint where it's turned off, okay, this is my last key pose where the constraint is on, and then that constraint, so that pose is where the last time that he's touching the box, okay, and on the last time that he's touching the object, we already want the constraint to be off, and that means that we've applied the visual transform to get it in this position, and the previous frame where the constraint is still on, the hand needs to be in the position that it was when we constrained it. So that means that key over there, we've now copied all the way so that the constraint and the hand position need to be have the same keys. Okay, and that is it. That wasn't too long, was it? How long was it? Half an hour. Okay, that was actually quite long, longer than I expected.